Wow. We've got news that is already sending shockwaves through the NFL. Absolutely unprecedented. Now, Maxx Crosby was one of the few players that we've ever seen involved in an agreed upon trade for two first round draft picks. That in and of itself hasn't happened very often. But just a few minutes ago, the Las Vegas Raiders released an insane statement. The Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Maxx Crosby. We will have no further comment at this time. So the trade is off. And according to Diana Rossini, it is off because Maxx Crosby failed a physical that would have been necessary for the trade to be consummated. Now, this is extremely, extremely complicated with many downstream potential effects because of the fact that nothing that has happened over the course of the past couple days in the legal tampering period around the NFL, none of these transactions is yet official. And the Raiders have spent close to $300 million in free agency on contracts that cannot be officially ratified until the start of the new league year on Wednesday. So the Raiders obviously were operating with the assumption that Maxx Crosby would be traded and that they wouldn't have his contract on the books and that they'd have the two first round picks that the Ravens agreed to pay. But now all of a sudden, Maxx Crosby is a Raider again. You go to over the cap, and this is the Maxx Crosby contract. A few minutes ago, the Maxx Crosby contract was on the books for the Ravens. Now he's got that silver and black logo at the upper right. So the Raiders now, they have essentially lost $30 million of 2026 salary cap space that they anticipated having. They now face a $35.8 million salary cap hit on Maxx Crosby again. And they have committed, at least for the time being, close to $300 million on free agents. The Raiders, in fact, they've gone on one of the biggest spending sprees that we've seen ever in NFL free agency history, although none of it is official. They re-signed Eric Stokes, 3 years, $30 million. They signed Tyler Linderbaum, the center, to an absolutely insane contract, $27 million per year, 3 years, $81 million. The previous high at the center position had been $18 million. So it's a 50% jump at the top of the center market. I think the Raiders are out of their minds, but they did it. They signed the receiver, Jalen Naylor, 3 years, $35 million. They signed Kwity Paye, the pass rusher, 3 years, $48 million. They signed the linebacker, formerly of the Eagles, Nakobe Dean, 3 years, $36 million. They signed former Packers linebacker Quay Walker, 3 years, $40.5 million. And they re-signed Malcolm Kuntz, 1 year, $11 million. On top of that, they agreed to a trade with the New York Jets to send Geno Smith back to his original team. How can you not be romantic about football? But look at all that the Raiders have done, and then consider that at least some of this had to be contingent on the assumption that Maxx Crosby would be traded, and the Baltimore Ravens said no. Now, this is where things might start to get a little bit conspiratorial, and they'll get really, really conspiratorial tomorrow if this happens. If Trey Hendrickson signs with the Baltimore Ravens, they are going to write books about this, and nobody will ever trust the Ravens enough to trade with them again. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying if that happens, oh boy, the lid comes off of all this. As of right now, like plausible deniability is at play. The Ravens could have seen something really wrong with Maxx Crosby's knee, and they said thanks, but no thanks. Trade is reversed. If it's as simple as that, then it's not good for the Raiders because the Raiders won't be able to offload Maxx Crosby for the compensation that they got from the Ravens. We were actually surprised with how much the Ravens paid here. They paid two for, they didn't actually pay it. I have to keep on going back and emphasizing that. We're surprised with how much the Ravens committed to pay. They committed to pay 2 first-round picks. It was a relatively clean deal outside of the fact that the physical was failed here. But one of the picks was what? Number 14, I believe. I think it was number 14. Top half of the 2026 NFL draft, and then the 2027 draft, it looks like it's going to be loaded. And whatever pick the Baltimore Ravens had in the 2027 draft was going to head over to the Raiders. The Dallas Cowboys were willing to pay a 1, a 2, and an impact player. But it was, I think, that first round pick in 2027 that was truly the deal maker here for the Raiders and the Ravens, because that draft is expected to be loaded. Going back to the drawing board, with Crosby having something wrong with his knee, if this just on the surface level is what happened, if it's just a failed physical and the Ravens said, no way can we take on a player with this injury risk. Obviously, Crosby's not getting any younger, 29 years old. If that's the case, then the Raiders are going to have a really, really tough time turning around and trying to sell Maxx Crosby for anything close to the price that was agreed upon with the Ravens. Now, if the Ravens just saw something really small there that was wrong, and they had been in talks with Trey Hendrickson's agent, and they figured, oh, maybe we can grab Trey Hendrickson for X amount of dollars. We know entering today that Trey wanted over 30, that no team was willing to meet that amount. And then we learned just a few minutes before this news came out, actually, that Trey Hendrickson would announce his team tomorrow. If the Ravens end up switching over and signing Trey Hendrickson less than 12 hours after this news comes out, then all of a sudden I've got a lot more questions. So let's let this develop. That's where we stand right now. Mike Silver says that a high-ranking executive for a team that talked to the Raiders about Crosby told me, I don't know what they do now. I don't know how they walk it back. Presumably another team could assess Crosby's knee and decide the risk is palatable, Mike Silver said. But the executive told him they won't get 2 1s, though. That's exactly what I just said. More from Mike Silver. Let's see if he agrees with my take on this. What likely happens next? Teams who considered trading for Crosby go back to the Raiders and inquire about trading for him again at a lower compensation than previously discussed. Trades could be contingent upon him passing a physical. If the Raiders give permission, of course, yes. Over half the league was interested in trading for Maxx Crosby. Over half the league may have just had their interest piqued. They might be trying to call again. They want to know exactly what is wrong with the knee. He's available again, and he probably, at this point, based on the information that we have, is going to be available at a relative discount to the original price. The reason that this went to the Ravens is because they were the only team willing to pay a price that the rest of the league considered exorbitant. It made sense for Baltimore on the surface because this is a team that is getting old. You've got a 32-year-old running back in Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson is 30. They're trying to cram in a Super Bowl before this core ages out in Baltimore, and their defense wasn't very good last year. So they were willing to pay an older player in Maxx Crosby to try to get that job done. But nobody else was willing to pay that high price. Maxx Crosby has not performed at his peak levels for a few years now. It wasn't like Micah Parsons when he was traded from the Packers or from the Cowboys to the Packers. Micah Parsons had statistically been at his very peak at the time that deal went down. So Parsons went for 2 1s and an impact player. Kenny Clark, the defensive tackle, went from Green Bay to Dallas. In Maxx Crosby's case, things are a little bit different. He hadn't had over 100 pressures since the 2021 season. He had some of his best work sack-wise in 2022. But I'm not trying to shortchange Maxx Crosby at all. This is a fantastic player, really good run defender. I'm just saying that he's not quite in his statistical prime anymore, and that kind of stuff matters for trade price. That's why he was never going to command what Micah Parsons did, the 2 1s and the impact player. The Raiders felt lucky that the Ravens initially agreed to the 2 1s, especially with a loaded draft in 2027. But now that's off the table, and now the Raiders are very, very unlikely to get that return for Maxx Crosby. But I think the more pressing issue right now is that now that he's back on the Raiders, now that we have this wild graphic taken on Tuesday, March 10th, with over the cap, putting the Raiders logo back there for Maxx Crosby. What do the Raiders do with the rest of their acquisitions? Is there a deal that the Raiders back out of that they've made over the course of the past couple days, because it cannot become official until the start of the new league year on Wednesday? Again, there have not been a lot of trades in NFL history for 2 first-round picks to begin with. That is rare to begin with. It takes a special player. Maxx Crosby's a special player. It takes a special circumstance, too, for a team to want to trade that special of a player and for an acquiring team to want to give up that kind of draft capital to grab that player. So just the trade being initially agreed to in the first place is exceptional. The fact that it has now been pulled off the table by this jarring statement coming from the Las Vegas Raiders is absolutely unprecedented. And because it has happened in that little window before stuff can become official tomorrow, Mike and I were talking a little bit earlier about this. We wonder if this is what slowed down NFL free agency today, because it was a rather slow day around the NFL. And, if Trey Hendrickson hasn't signed yet, he's the top edge rusher on the market. He wants over $30 million a year. If Maxx Crosby hasn't signed yet, and that's somebody, or hasn't been officially traded yet, and if there was some uncertainty behind that, because that's going to be a $30 million base salary and $782,000 of per game roster bonus money being shipped elsewhere. If those things had any uncertainty about them, which they obviously do, then that could slow down business around the rest of the NFL, because this is a salary cap league where teams obviously have to be judicious with how they spend their money. The Ravens have rescinded deals in the past because of issues with physicals. In 1997, Baltimore backed out of a deal with Cowboys safety Brock Marion minutes before he was going to sign a contract because the team discovered a potential problem with his left shoulder. In 2018, Baltimore voided its 4-year, $29 million agreement with wide receiver Ryan Grant after he failed a physical over an ankle injury. Interesting stuff. That is from Adam Schefter. Some background that this is not the first time this has happened with the Raiders, but this is the most high-profile incident. And you know what else is crazy? We didn't hear from the Ravens saying that they were backing out. We heard from a very pissed off Las Vegas Raiders organization that the Ravens were backing out. I mean, this is a statement that will live in infamy. I mean, you look at this. The Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Maxx Crosby. We will have no further comment at this time. I mean, that's 2 middle fingers up in the air from the Las Vegas Raiders across country to Baltimore. That's how you do that in statement form. That is absolutely wild. Tom Pelissero says the Cowboys would still be interested in a Maxx Crosby trade. Okay, well, the Cowboys traded for Rashawn Gary the other day with the Green Bay Packers. Now, that deal isn't finalized yet either. Like, the trade deadline passed in November. The trade window doesn't open until the new league year. 4:00 Eastern tomorrow on Wednesday. So 1 p.m. Pacific. I believe Las Vegas is on Pacific time. 4:00 Baltimore time tomorrow is when that trade window opens again. So even the deal for Rashawn Gary from the Green Bay Packers to the Raiders, from the Green Bay Packers to the Cowboys, if Dallas feels they can trade for Maxx Crosby and they see his knee and they're okay with it and they feel that they can get a better price than they did before, they can say no to the Rashawn Gary trade, because the ink has not been applied to the dotted line. It has not had a chance to dry on any of these deals. Crazy, crazy stuff. Oh my goodness. So this is some random fan, Mike, that said if the Ravens happen to trade for Maxx Crosby, I will completely shave my head. Is this? Yeah, it looks like somebody with a Kyle Hamilton Defensive Player of the Year Twitter handle. Well, let me show you guys this. This is funny. Mike says, show this, and it is, in fact, hilarious. This is going viral on the internet right now. All right, here we go. So some poor Ravens fan named Nate has already shaved his head because he said if the Ravens happened to trade for Maxx Crosby on March 4th, which was before this trade happened on Friday, I will completely shave my head. That's Nate. His head is shaved. He tweeted this on, I guess he tweeted this just a few minutes ago because he knew that he was going to go viral. It's already, it says March 10th here, 748,000 views, or He put that out a couple hours ago. I don't know what time zone that timestamp at the bottom is, the 7:23 p.m. So I'm on Central Time right now. That's crazy. I feel bad for this guy because he shaved his head, and Maxx Crosby is not even coming to the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, talk about shockwaves. This is going to create a wild next 12 to 24 hours. Again, whatever we think we know about deals that have already been done, we don't actually know because we got to make sure that those deals pass through. I mean, this is the best example of that. That this was the one that everybody thought was going to be the big news to kick off the weekend that would lead into the legal tampering window. And everybody assumed it was signed, sealed, and delivered, but it wasn't. Maxx Crosby reportedly fails the physical. Of course, his season ended with the meniscus injury. He had the surgery. The physical took a look at the knee. And according to the Raiders, who are speaking not on behalf of the Ravens, but are speaking on behalf of the trade that was nixed, the Ravens pulled out of the trade. Diana Rossini later reported it was because of the failed physical. Crazy, crazy stuff. Over the next several hours, we're going to see what the ramifications around the league are. I'm sure I have some 49ers fans watching me, and the 49ers, everybody get in line here. Over half the league was interested in Maxx Crosby before this happened. Teams would be out of their minds to not check on this now because maybe the Raiders are going to have to move to a fire sale price. Maybe somebody's going to be willing to inherit this player even with a knee issue. I mean, that is the right of these teams. The Ravens obviously didn't want to do it at that compensation. Maybe there'd be a compensation where they'd be happy to do it, and they told that to the Raiders, but the Raiders said, get lost. The Raiders said, we're going to send out a statement to everybody without even answering you guys. We're going to give you guys the two middle fingers with our statement that's going to float all over social media. Nobody knows. We are operating in complete fog of war now. All we know is that Crosby, according to the Ravens, via the Raiders who put out this statement, failed the physical, and we know that the Raiders have already committed $282 million in free agency to a host of different players. They have been the biggest spenders so far, although the money has not officially been spent. And, salary cap room is finite. A lot of people during free agency seem to think, oh, my team should spend on this guy and spend on that guy. The Raiders have been on a shopping spree, but the reason they've been on a shopping spree is because they've been so bad over so many years, so they haven't gotten to pay any of their own players. And when you don't pay your own players, you typically have a lot of salary cap space. So they're trying to build this thing up quickly. Tom Brady's the owner now. John Spytek is the GM. New head coach Clint Kubiak, and they've added the free agents that I just listed a few minutes ago. Or at least they plan to add those free agents. We always the qualify now, right? We can't say, oh, they've added these guys for sure because it hasn't been signed on the dotted line. It can't be signed until tomorrow. They have this entire plan in place. It made sense to trade Maxx Crosby, especially for the return that they were planning to get from the Ravens. But now, again, they've lost at the snap of a finger $30 million of expected salary cap space, and we want to see what the hell happens moving forward. I mean, this is crazy, crazy stuff. My buddy Jason texting me. Maybe he's watching. He's asking if the 49ers are back in it. I think everybody's back in it. Nobody knows what the hell is going on here. The deals cannot become official until tomorrow. Crazy, crazy stuff. Wow. All right. Any questions here? I know that you guys are NFL fans probably from all over filing in. We are checking in with Mike right now to see what is going on in the comment section. I'm going to go into the comment section and we'll see what people are saying. Kevin says, if the Cowboys get aggressive for Crosby, they could possibly back out of the Rashawn Gary trade. You would like to see Rashawn Gary with the 49ers. Do I agree? It doesn't matter if I agree. I don't know if Raheem Morris agrees. And, the reason that I bring that up is the 49ers have given us very little clues as to what exactly they are looking for defensively, especially in the front seven. I know that they re-signed Garrett Wallow today, but that's a backup signing. That is a special teams player primarily in an ideal world for the 49ers. They have a new defensive coordinator, and I don't even know what they want to do with Bryce Huff. Now, some people think it's a foregone conclusion that they move on from Bryce Huff because he's a solid guy and Raheem Morris is going to want to run a different front. I'm not so sure because the 49ers right now, I think they want to keep a 4-3. Raheem Morris is coached in a 4-3, and they still have Chris Kasarik. Now, John Lynch talked about some expandability to more 3-4 type of outside linebackers and defensive ends, right? Those are interchangeable positions in a 3-4. So that would change what the 49ers are looking for. And right now, they haven't provided any more clues beyond that as to what exactly they're going for. 3-4 base defense would lead the way to a lot of five-man fronts, which is what Raheem Morris did quite a bit of with the Atlanta Falcons. That obviously would lead to some of the defensive linemen standing up. They wouldn't have their hands in the dirt. And then you start to ask, okay, does this guy rather have his hand in the dirt, or is this guy okay with standing up and rushing from there and occasionally dropping back into coverage a little bit more often? I am learning as we go, just as you guys are. And then I turn around and I process and I analyze it. And the 49ers need to give us more data points as to what kind of player they're going to want so we can understand where Raheem Morris and Matt Eberflus are going to be going with this defense. What would happen if the 49ers traded for Maxx Crosby in the roster builder that I made? Well, it would immediately eat up $30 million of salary cap space. So, I mean, Maxx Crosby's contract is really simple. It's something that the Raiders actually built to trade. Like that was implicit in the extension that was signed in the 2025 offseason. I'll explain right here by showing you guys the actual contract. The Raiders did not give Maxx Crosby a big signing bonus. And the way that these contracts work is that if you give a player a big signing bonus, it prorates for over up to 5 years, but it's something that you got to pay right away as a team. So some teams are going to park a lot of the money, the guaranteed money they want to give a star player in the signing bonus, which is this column right here. And that way the salary cap hit, as you can see, is stretched out. So the Raiders only gave Maxx Crosby a $2.2 million signing bonus. They decided to only prorate it through 2 years, as is their choice. They didn't prorate it over the maximum 5 years. So 10.2 million divided by 2 is 5.1 million. 5.1 hit the cap last year. 5.1 hit the cap this year. All the other money for Maxx Crosby was just parked in base salary, which made his deal extremely tradable. If you already have like a veteran minimum base salary, and all the money has been paid out as a signing bonus, if it's already been restructured or if that's just the way you gave out the contract, well, you can't trade away the money, and that becomes a less valuable contract for a team that's holding on to it, right? Because the money is already sunk, like you've already paid. The Raiders were able to offload, or not yet again. The Raiders are trying to offload the base salary here, which is a full $30 million guaranteed, and they're trying to offload it to the Baltimore Ravens, and now it looks like other teams can get involved and see exactly what the deal with the knee is. This is from Mike Florio. Maxx Crosby reportedly failed his Ravens physical. Based on the Raiders' statement, it feels like something more than that because the Raiders seem pissed. Yes. I don't often agree with Mike Florio, I'll say that. But in this case, I think I do agree with Mike Florio. Let's go back to the statement here, and then I could talk more about the contract. But yes, the Raiders do not seem happy right here. We will have no further comment at this time without an explanation. Again, that seems like the double middle finger pointed across country to Baltimore. Wow. Absolutely unprecedented stuff happening in the NFL. So anyway, I was talking about the contract. I can go back to the contract. Any team that would trade for this contract would just immediately pick up the $30 million base salary. Now, theoretically, you could convert that base salary to an option bonus if you had enough cash to pay it out right away. And you could prorate as an option bonus or a signing bonus over 5 years. And you could knock down the salary cap hit. That is something that an acquiring team could potentially do. Different teams have different financial and salary cap situations, so hard to tell exactly what each individual team would do. You just have to wait until a trade happens for that to happen. But to make the trade itself, you have to absorb the contract as is, and that would incur a $30 million cap hit for anybody that does acquire Maxx Crosby. Good question. Thank you. We got people, members of the channel, saying, please no Crosby. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. I think Maxx Crosby at the right price is a great idea if the knee is intact. I don't know if the knee's intact. I don't know what the price is going to be. Basically, we know nothing, but we're all along for what could be a thrilling NFL ride here with some of the craziest news that has ever come across my desk. And we've sat here in this room, in this studio, and reacted to a lot of good stuff. By the way, I mean, maybe I should have zoomed out on the camera here a little bit. Will center me right now. The reason I'm zooming out is because that's a Shane Leckler jersey behind me. So normally I have the Frank Gore jersey, but I think right now we could just be a little bit further away. My buddy got me these signed jerseys, and Shane Leckler's one of the great punters of all time. I wasn't about to say no to signed Shane Leckler jersey. So I know that we're talking about the Raiders. I know that Maxx Crosby is back, and we've got Shane Leckler back there on the wall. I think it's a good time to feature that. We used to have both jerseys in clear sight over there in the background, but then I figured, like, it's a 49ers show most of the time. Now we're covering NFL wide news. I like the black to go with the red, so it kind of balances out the background. But we had the corner of the Leckler jersey visible. Now we've got the whole thing visible because this is a show that very much pertains to a very angry Las Vegas Raiders team. Tom Brady doesn't seem thrilled about this. John Spytek doesn't seem thrilled about this. I'm sure that Mark Davis doesn't seem thrilled about this. Guys, I don't know what the prices for Maxx Crosby are going to be. We're still trying to pick up the pieces from this shocking news. We got people asking, is it going to be a 2? Could the 49ers get Maxx Crosby? Stuff has to develop here. I mean, this is breaking news. This is crazy because so much around the entire NFL, like as far as the speed of free agency and other deals getting done, might be contingent on it. And I am just sitting here, like all of you, wondering how the hell this moves forward. I want to know more about Maxx Crosby's knee. I want to know more about the prices that potential suitors are coming back in with right now. I think that GMs around the league, probably at the start of this show, were like, what the hell is going on? Maybe now they have made contact with John Spytek and Tom Brady, and maybe now they have a bit better idea of if they want to proceed or not. But this is probably something that's going to carry over into tomorrow and maybe beyond that. One GM summarized the feelings around the league. Oh, boy. Who's that from, Mike? I don't want to click on the link quite yet. This is what the one GM said. This is very much bullshit on Baltimore's part. Whoo! I mean, that's what we assumed at the start of this show. I said, if this ends up being bullshit on Baltimore's part, which is what this one GM just said, well, then that's from Tom Pelissero. Teams are not going to want to ever trade with Baltimore again. Now, we'll get to the bottom of this, I'm sure, at some point, because if this is bullshit on Baltimore's part, then another team is going to trade for Maxx Crosby fairly quickly because they'll take a look at his knee and they'll say, well, Baltimore just wanted to sign Trey Hendrickson or whatever Baltimore does. Well, we'll see why Baltimore wanted to back out of this, why they got cold feet. I'm sure that there's going to be some reporting in that regard. But if this moves quickly to another team, then what this GM said through Tom Pelissero is indeed going to be true. And that would really hurt the Ravens' reputation. And so far, based on this, this is the best we can infer about this entire mess. And that's what it is. It is an entire mess. Wow. All right, more questions. Let's go. Baltimore has backed out of trades before, but they haven't backed out of something as big as this. Again, 2 first-round picks. 2. There have not been a lot of players in NFL history that have been traded for 2 first-round picks. So that made this whole thing unusual to begin with. We didn't expect Maxx Crosby to fetch 2 first-round picks at the very start of this, but he ended up doing it. Only the Ravens were initially willing to pay. All right, we've got a 49ers update here. Maybe we're going to put this, we'll put this into the title later on, Mike. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. So I'm going to read this to you guys, but first off, Mike is the great producer of this channel. Okay, he does a really, really good job. Mike and I were talking because the 49ers were very, very willing to spend on defensive tackle yesterday when they got into a bidding war with the Tennessee Titans for John Franklin Myers. The 49ers need a pass rushing defensive tackle, right? So give me a chance to cough here really quickly. So the 49ers were very, very interested in trading or signing John Franklin Myers. That didn't work out. They lost the bidding war to the Titans, who were willing to pay him $21 million annually. However, it came out today that Osa Odigizua, who's a very, very good defensive tackle, who just signed an extension with the Dallas Cowboys worth $20 million annually last year, it came out that he might be available to trade for a trade. Mike actually called it before that report came out today, and we talked about it on the show. You can go watch my other shows for receipts, but this is real stuff. Mike said the 49ers are going to be in on Osa Odigizua. And he also said that he said this before we even knew for sure that Dallas was putting him on the trade block. Well, now it has come out that the Dallas Cowboys are receiving calls inquiring about veteran defensive tackle Osa Odigizua and his potential availability on the trade market, according to multiple sources talking to the Star Telegram newspaper. 2 league sources say that the San Francisco 49ers are among the teams that have made contact with Dallas. CBS Sports was the first to report Odighizua's interest on the trade market. That being said, I would say that Mike Urtaza was the first one to really bring this to all of our attention. So congratulations to Mike. He's becoming more of an NFL insider all day. He's the more valuable component of this channel as we've grown to over 100,000 subs. But the 49ers, maybe people should, we're talking a lot about Maxx Crosby. Maybe it's a good idea to focus on Osa Odigizua, the defensive tackle of the Cowboys, who may be up for trade. Now, we could talk about Crosby and Odigizua. I think that we can delve further into stuff. I know that we've got a lot of 49ers fans on here. So now, we started this as an NFL-wide show. Those of you who are hardcore 49ers fans, even those of you who aren't, stick around. You could see how well we cover the 49ers here. I'm sure you wish your local NFL team had this kind of YouTube channel, but maybe we could start one for your team. For right now, we're going to talk about the 49ers, and we're going to show you how that defensive line looks. And the yellow highlights are foundational pillars. The 49ers wanted to bring in John Franklin Myers, and I'm just going to very briefly, don't freak out here. This is just for illustration's sake. If the 49ers would have won their bidding war with the Titans for John Franklin Myers, he would have been right here, and he would have been a foundational pillar with how much money they would have had to pay him, close to $20 million a year. So the 49ers clearly want a second foundational pillar in the defensive line room. They got one at every other position group. However, they're not going to get that through John Franklin Myers. Now they're talking about trading for Osa Odigizua. And of course, if that does end up happening, then we're going to fill in Osa Odigizua. Oh man, I don't know if I can spell this right. I have to go back to my chat with Mike. Osa Odigizua. Hizua. Good. I got it right. I think that's correct spelling. So they were going to get if they get Osa Odigizua via trade, then you could highlight him as a foundational pillar. The reason that the 49ers really are looking for a veteran defensive tackle is because last offseason, they went out and they got Alfred Collins and CJ West and Mykel Williams, 3 rookies via the NFL draft, were all very, very good run defenders. That is their specialty. They are run defenders before they are pass rushers. It is what the 49ers had to do last offseason. They had to shore up their run defense because it was so bad in 2024. Well, now that you've shored up the run defense, they were a top 10 run defense when Mykel Williams was available. And I thought that they got great play, developing play from CJ West and Alfred Collins. Now you can focus on trying to fix the pass rush. And I think Osa Odigizua would be somebody who fits that piece for the 49ers. Now it just depends on what Dallas would require for a trade to happen. Now, Dallas is busy, though, potentially on the Maxx Crosby front. The Athletic says that the Dallas Cowboys are not expected to re-engage in a Maxx Crosby trade discussion at this time, but they could be trying to leverage the Raiders. They could be saying, hey, we're not interested, lower the price. Who knows? Like, I would trust nothing. Ricky the dog just reported, this is that Ricky account that's crazy. Like, we like to follow it because it's been right on some stuff. It's wrong on some other stuff. So don't treat it like religion, but Mike and I actually track this guy's hit rate, and we're going to add up his percentage by the time that this offseason is over. But he says that he's hearing that Trey Hendrickson is now going to the Ravens. Now, he could just be guessing based on this crazy Maxx Crosby news. But again, if that happens, this needs to be investigated because that would be absolutely diabolical from the Ravens to yank out of the Maxx Crosby trade after the Raiders had spent $289 million on free agents and leave the Raiders high and dry, and then turn to Trey Hendrickson with the rest of the league potentially stalled when it comes to all these free agent happenings because of the amount of money that is going to be changing hands here with Maxx Crosby and Trey Hendrickson. I mean, you would need these 2 deals to go through to see the domino effect of the rest of the deals around the NFL. Ricky the dog, by the way, I know this show, we're just talking about how great Mike is. Ricky the dog, I guess, follows Mike on social media. So Ricky the dog follows Mike, but he doesn't follow me. Mike was out here talking about Osa Odigizua being available for trade. The Cowboys reportedly out of the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes, even though they had the second best offer before the Ravens initially agreed to that deal with the Raiders. We don't know if that's true, though. It could just be a leverage play from Dallas, but Dallas has already agreed to a trade for Rashawn Gary. We'll see if that holds up before it has to become official tomorrow. And the Cowboys are shopping Osa Odigizua. That's a different position. That's defensive tackle, not defensive end. Boy, this is crazy. You know, people asking, could the 49ers swoop in? Anybody could swoop in at this point. All bets are off. We have never seen anything like this. We got Detroit fans saying Detroit needs to pounce on Maxx Crosby. The 49ers are not going to trade BA for Osa. I don't think anybody wants to trade for Brandon Ayuk. That'd be shocking. You're definitely not going to trade him for a good player. So let's keep it realistic, guys. That's $30 million. That's going to change how the Raiders are approaching it. I think so. I mean, they've got to offload that $30 million if they want their financial plan with the rest of this spending, the $289 million, to check out. Like, you can't tell me that in a hard salary cap league where the 49ers and teams like the Eagles and the 49ers are at the very top of the NFL in terms of financial management, they're obsessing over $1 million here and $1 million there because that's how little space there is. You can't tell me that $30 million, even if the Raiders have a lot of space right now, doesn't make a big deal. I mean, it's unused salary cap space carries over from season to season. So it's a big picture thing. The more you waste now while you're not good, the harder the squeeze is going to be when you're good and you start to have to pay a lot of guys in the future. And because it's all interconnected, then you have to be very, very judicious with your salary cap spending at all times. Ricky says that Kyler Murray is deciding between the Vikings and the Steelers and is leaning toward the Vikings. We'll see it. We'll believe it when we see it. We will believe it when we see it. But Mike, put that on our spreadsheet. We're tracking Ricky. We'll see how good he is. I was wondering, today was a little bit slow. Oh my God. Ian Rappaport just said there's no such thing as a failed physical. It's a decision that the team makes on the amount of risk they're willing to assume. Okay, well, semantics, but I get it. I think Ian Rappaport is trying to imply that the Ravens left the Raiders at the altar here. I mean, it would be one thing if the Raiders had not spent $289 million over the course of the next 2 days, 3 days after the trade. It'd be one thing, but the fact, and it'd be also be another thing if it was all also water under the bridge, if these were already expenditures they couldn't reverse. The fact that they've committed to so much spending, and the fact that it's not official yet because it can't be official until tomorrow. You were in this weird window that creates like this nuclear combination that could really explode over the course of the next 24 hours. I cannot wait to see what happens. Any more questions? Could this affect the Tyler Linderbaum deal? That deal was so absurdly large. The top of the market was 18 million before that for Creed Humphrey, and then they go up to 27. That's a 50% increase. Are you kidding me on that front? That deal was so large that I think everything is in jeopardy now. That's especially stuff that's that big. Because the Raiders, unless they're crazy, they've got to have some kind of financial plan. Now, if this is just the Ravens being jerks, right? If this is just bad, nefarious acting on the Ravens' part, then the Raiders actually yes, that this would suck for the Raiders because they're going to get less draft compensation for Maxx Crosby because nobody was willing to offer what the Ravens were willing to offer, but they should still be able to offload Maxx Crosby. So if they're able to still finish a trade with somebody else and the 30 million leaves and the Raiders can stick behind the spending that they've already made. Now, the bigger issue comes if the knee is in such a shape that the Raiders can't offload this guy. And he's guaranteed this 30 million this year. All of a sudden, you're looking at a situation where the Raiders are having to foot $30 million that they definitely did not anticipate having to foot in a year where they've already committed so much money to future contracts. So once we get to the bottom of this, we'll know exactly how the Raiders can proceed. It's just so fresh right now that it's currently unclear. No, the 49ers still have money in free agency. 49ers have about 30 million. They could open up more. 49ers can still spend, and they could still trade for Osa Odigizua. We can talk about all that. We'll probably do another show talking about Osa, and it should be good. But, I mean, just all this stuff coming out right now, it's all intertwined, right? Osa on the Cowboys being the second highest bidder for Maxx Crosby. It is all intertwined. '49ers targets if the Raiders renege on their free agent deals. Well, I mean, I highly doubt a lot of this will happen because it does seem that the initial feeling around the league is that the blame is on the Ravens, which means that somebody's going to want Maxx Crosby. But if you look at Jalen Naylor was really interesting, and he can move. I know he only clocked at a 4.5, but I think Jalen Naylor plays a little bit faster. If for some reason the Raiders don't grab Jalen Naylor, that's a player that we had on our list for the 49ers. Of course, Tyler Linderbaum is an awesome center, but I mean, the Raiders need a center, and they were so willing to pay an exorbitant price. I don't think that Tyler Linderbaum deal is going to be scuttled at all. Those are the two guys I would look at on the list of the Las Vegas Raiders who the 49ers might be interested in. I mean, everybody's interested in Linderbaum. That's why he commanded so much money, but let's just wait to see what happens in the case of the Raiders. Yeah, I mean, I listed the guys that the Raiders have signed. Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker. I mean, the Raiders they're trying to be good quick. I mean, they're going to have quite a bit of draft capital. They're going to go out and pick Fernando Mendoza. He's going to be the quarterback. They've signed, again, $289 million worth of free agents. That can become official tomorrow. We'll see if they back out of any of this. It's, in the 46 minutes that I've been talking, it increasingly looks like Baltimore is the bad actor here. And the Raiders obviously began this hour that we've been talking very, very mad. That we see that in this statement. But if Baltimore is indeed the bad actor, then the Raiders will likely be able to ship off Maxx Crosby for a lower return and keep the free agent class that they've already committed to so far. Are the 49ers going to extend Trent Williams' contract? I'd be shocked if they didn't. That is the most likely course of action for sure. You think the Ravens are insane because they fired John Harbaugh? That's funny. He's now with the New York Giants. Oh, the Ravens, I mean, it's been a very successful organization. I know it's been a while since the last Super Bowl in 2012 with John Harbaugh, but I mean, they've always played the comp pick game well. They've been diligent with some of the physicals. As the Ian Rappaport said, it's not a matter of purely black and white failing a physical. It's a matter of, okay, the team just does not want to assume that amount of risk. And I mean, this was an expensive trade for the Baltimore Ravens. This was 2 first-round picks. It was a price that nobody else around the league was willing to pay. And if they just got a little bit queasy looking at the knee and not really sure if Maxx Crosby was going to hold up for a number of seasons or if he was going to be able to deliver high-level play, it's a judgment call, right? It's not something where, okay, the physical is either passed or failed. It is a judgment call. They have to sit down and discuss how much risk they're willing to take on and then say, okay, no, this deal's not going to happen. Now, some of the quotes that we've heard from executives around the league saying this is bullshit on the Ravens' part, that they might just sign Trey Hendrickson. I mean, we've seen some of this speculation. If they turn around and they sign Trey tomorrow, if that came together that quickly, I would be suspicious that the Ravens just found a better situation and then they used the excuse of the physical judgment call to back out of the Crosby deal. Either way, it's definitely already left a sour taste in Las Vegas's mouth. Yeah, nothing's on paper. I mean, legally, the Ravens can back out of whatever they want. The question here would be principle in this matter. And that's why we've seen players back out of contracts, right? We've seen players like Randy Gregory, I think, agreed to a deal, I believe it was with the Denver Broncos a few years ago. And then he backed out because he agreed during this window where stuff isn't official, backed out of the deal. And that was that. He didn't sign with the Denver Broncos. So, or was it the Cowboys? It might have been the Cowboys. No, I think it was the Broncos because he was with the Cowboys. So it happens, but we haven't seen it happen for a trade, and we definitely haven't seen it happen for a trade. I'm sure we've seen it happen for a trade, but not for a trade where the compensation was going to be 2 first-round draft picks. Eric Kendricks, it happened with the 49ers. 49ers agreed to a contract verbally with Eric Kendricks during this legal tampering window. The contract was not consummated once the new league year started, and Kendricks went to the Cowboys instead. So it can happen with players. It can happen with trades in this legal tampering window where stuff can be announced, but not necessarily finalized. What defense are the 49ers going to run? That's the real question. Yes. That is the real question. What defense are the 49ers going to run? Because we don't know. We don't know until they start signing guys. Now, they can get Osa Odighizuwa in there. Remember that Osa was on the defense that Matt Eberflus coordinated last year with the Cowboys. And Eberflus is a 4-3 guy. I think the 49ers will stay in a 4-3 base. I think they want to become more amorphous because Raheem Morris gives you that ability since he's coached different fronts. I think it's important to introduce more 5-man fronts. The 49ers only ran 5-man fronts, I think, a grand total of, what was it, Mike, 70 times last year? I think they were only in 5-man fronts like 7 or 8% of the time. I think to stop the run and maintain flexibility on the back end, it's important to do it in this league. It's been one of the best ways to stop the 49ers' own rushing attack. A lot of teams are running these 5-man fronts, and you got to run those out of the 3-4. So I think the 49ers would be wise to add that to their repertoire here in 2026. But I don't think they'd be wise to completely abandon the 4-down front that is the core of their defense. And I think Osa Odighizuwa as a player is good enough to fit both philosophies, the 5-man front so they could run out of a 3-4 and the standard 4-3. And that's why Mike predicted that they'd be interested in him, and they are indeed calling the Dallas Cowboys about Osa Odighizuwa. Trent Williams played really well last year. I don't think that he was at his very best. He was like, I have the numbers. He was 88th percentile in pass blocking. So he's better than 88% of tackles in terms of pass blocking. And he was 97th percentile in run blocking. So he still is the very best option for the 49ers at left tackle. But obviously he's going to be 38. So the 49ers do have to think about how this is going to move into the future when they are negotiating terms with Trent Williams. This is true. Sky Moore is leaving. He's going to the Green Bay Packers. 49ers going to have to figure something else out at the return specialist position. And it could be a receiver, like a speed guy the 49ers get. It could be Jacob Cowing, who's already on the football team. Could be a draftee. Mike keeps on talking about Darnell Mooney. Mike is already right about the 49ers pursuing Osa Odighizuwa, so maybe Darnell Mooney is somebody that can join the 49ers. I think they need a speed weapon now. They've got the size with Mike Evans. I think they're going to maybe sign a speed weapon and draft one. But remember, they already have Cowing and Watkins on the team too. You also need something out of the guys already in the building. Osa is a monster. Yes, he is. That would be a hell of a pickup, I think, for the 49ers. Maybe they should load manage Trent to preserve him for a great season. Maybe that's why they signed an offensive tackle yesterday. Vidarian Lowe, who has started over 20 games. Maybe they're planning on load managing Trent Williams throughout the season. Bill Walsh actually rotated offensive linemen. Now, you know how you rotate defensive linemen? Bill Walsh rotated offensive linemen for the dynastic 49ers. And, if defensive linemen have to rotate to stay fresh, it's hand-to-hand combat with offensive linemen on every snap. Why would an offensive lineman benefit from that? It's not the craziest thought of all time. These seasons are long, And especially if you're running a lot of outside zone and the linemen have to move. Bill Walsh did it. If Bill Walsh did it, I don't think it's a crazy thought. So I think it's just some food for thought. Terry thinks the 49ers need another running back to rotate with Christian McCaffrey. You might be right. And then Danny says the 49ers need more wide receivers and another piece on the defensive line and another linebacker. Well, it's a lot of things to need, but yeah, that the 49ers need to sign 27 more players. They only have 63 on the 90-man roster right now. All right, that's it. Raiders pissed off. Crazy news. Everybody hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you soon.